Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist, and today we're going to be doing a Lightsworn test hand video. So this deck is a really old, really fun deck that just kind of pops up every so often and gets new support, kind of like Heroes do, and it's probably one of the coolest old school decks that you can ever pick up, because there's so many different ways of building it, and so many cool different variants of playing with Lightsworns that is just absolutely crazy. This deck is fun. You can build all sorts of crazy builds like Shadow Lightsworn. You can build pure, kind of like how I built. Mine's kind of pure-ish. You can build Chaos Lightsworn. You can build all sorts of cool different variants of this deck. That's just a few variants of this deck that you can build. You can build Nemesis. I mean, there's just so many cool different ways to actually build this deck. But I wanted to build kind of a pure-ish deck with a couple of tech cards in the deck to kind of focus a little bit more on how the deck actually functions, to show you guys the basic fundamentals of the way that Lightsworn actually function off of milling cards, and built close to 40. This is actually a 41 card build to be able to show you guys exactly how the deck works and how it used to work, with Judgment Dragon being the boss monster of the deck, which is my favorite. Like, besides Dark Arm Dragon, this is probably one of my favorite boss monsters of all time. It's like such a cool card. So anyways guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can come part of our notification squad, and let's get straight on to this, guys. And don't forget to check out the Patreon, where you have all those awesome rewards, like getting your name shirt for your single video, getting a signed card to mail, or even getting your Twisted deck profile every single month to your patron, along with test hands. So let's get straight on into the test hands themselves. So this deck, like I said, it's a little bit crazy because it's not super chaos-ish variant. It's more like a tuner-ish variant, where you're trying to get a bunch of tuners in the graveyard to be able to resolve your Judgment Dragon that's in the extra deck, because I wanted to build a deck that could summon out that card a little bit easily and go off with its effects. It's not the greatest. It's kind of like the retrain, where they had the retrain of Dark Arm Dragon and the Annihilation Dragon, and then they had the dragon, the Ice Bear, the Trishula fusion monster, and then they made the Chaos Emperor Dragon version that was a pendulum monster. Like, they had all those weird like boss monsters, and then they made the Judgment Dragon one as the final 4 jump monsters that were ever released, and I wanted to be able to summon that card in a particular deck, which if you guys want to check out the deck profile, you can definitely check that out in the description below. So I will go ahead and say this: Lightsworns are kind of weird because there's not super big combos in the deck, but at the same time, you're never going to get the same hand twice, and you're never going to get the same mills twice, because the variant is so crazy to get the same mill twice. Like, it's just not gonna super happen. So let's go ahead and see what we can do with this, so you guys can learn the basics of how to play Lightsworn. So we're gonna go ahead and draw, and we're going to draw into a copy of Raiden, which Raiden's really good. You want to get Raiden in the hand as quickly as possible. Malicious, we're gonna probably put that back on the top of the deck. Lumina, Hat Tricker, and a copy of Adahara. Okay, this actually lets me show you a really good combo in the deck that you can do. That's a small combo that can get you a complete shutdown on pendulum monsters and shut down an entire deck. So we're going to go ahead and special summon out the copy of Adahara from our hand, because you can special summon out Adahara if you don't control any monsters, or if all the monsters you control are normal monsters. So we're going to go ahead and special summon out Adahara because we don't have any monsters. Then you're going to normal summon out your copy of Raiden, and then you're going to special summon out from your hand the copy of Hat Tricker. Now, once you get the copy of Hat Tricker on your side of the field, you're going to go ahead and use Raiden's effect to mill the top 2 off your deck, which is another copy of Adahara and a Judgment Dragon, which is not that great that we milled the Judgment Dragon, but we can get it back. It's fine. You can get it back later. So at this point, you can go ahead and synchro summon these 2 together and go into a copy of Naturia Beast, which is a little bit of a strong board to start with, depending on what you're playing against, because you do have the copy of Raiden and you do have the copy of Naturia Beast. Now, when you go into your end phase, you're going to send the top 2 cards off your deck, which is a Solar Recharge and a copy of Plague Spreader, which is going to help us out next turn to go into a copy of Beals with our copy of Malicious. Now, this is where another combo comes into play. So we're going to pass turn. It's going to go to our opponent, and they're going to pass back to us. Now, if they don't board wipe us and we just go for turn, we're going to draw for our turn. Let's just say that they didn't resolve the copy of Naturia Beast and they played it really safe. So I'm going to go ahead and use the copy. Now, this is a very, very old combo that I came up with a long time ago. I don't know if I'm probably not the original person that came up with it, but it's something I used to do all the time when I first picked up Black Wings and Heroes and made these weird chaos zombie variants that were like summoning out using malicious when malicious was at 3 back in like 2012. But this is a really cool old school combo that I do. So what you do is if you have malicious in your hand and it's dead, okay, this card is totally dead in my hand. I can't do anything with it. You put it back on top of your deck. You special summon out the Plague Spreader, use Raiden, and you mill the top 2 off your deck, and guess what? Now your Malicious is live that you can banish from your graveyard and special summon out a Malicious from the deck, which is going to be right here. Once I find it, there's the Malicious that you're going to special summon, and you just thin the deck by 1, which is super helpful. Now, we haven't normal summoned either, so that's something to keep in mind. You have not normal summoned, but you can go ahead and synchro these 2 together and go in for a copy. Now, that Plague Spreader will be banished, but you can go in for a copy of Beals, or you can go in for a copy of the Chaos Ruler, the Chaotomatic Magical Dragon. Now, this is a really interesting card. Yes, it is a mouthful, but what this card does is if it's synchro summon, you can excavate the top 5 of your deck, and if you do, you get to add 1 excavated light or dark card from your deck to your hand, and you send the remaining cards to the graveyard. So I would probably go in for that if I was trying to push. If I wasn't, I would go for Beals to be a little bit more defensive. So we're going to go ahead for that. We're going to go ahead and excavate the top 5 off the top of the deck. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 just to dig into the deck. We have not hit a single wolf, which kind of sucks, but we're going to go ahead and ditch all these to the graveyard. So we're going to go ahead and send all those to the graveyard, and we're going to add from our deck to our hand the copy of Judgment Dragon, because it says that if this card is synchro summon, you get excavate the top 5 of your deck, and if you do, you add 1 of the excavated light or dark monsters from your hand, and you send the remaining to the graveyard. You can banish a light or dark monster from your hand or graveyard, except this card, and special summon this card from your graveyard, but banish it when it leaves the field. So it's a pretty good card. It's pretty good just to revive it, and you do have dark monsters in the graveyard in the form of your Malicious, so you can bring it back if you do. So we're going to go ahead and look at this. You have a copy of Raiden and a Lila in your graveyard, so you have 2 of the names, but you don't have any other names in the graveyard, which is not that good, but we're about to get a copy of Lumina in the graveyard. So we're going to go ahead and normal summon the Lumina, because we haven't normal summoned this turn. This is turn 3, by the way. We're going to go ahead and normal summon the Lumina. Lumina's effect will activate, and you can discard a card from your hand and then target a level 4 or lower Lightsworn monster in your graveyard and special summon it. So we're going to send Adahara and bring back our copy of Raiden. So once you bring back that copy of Raiden, its effect will not be able to go off, because during your main phase, you can send the top 2 of your deck to the graveyard, and if a Lightsworn monster was among it, it gains 200 attack into the end of the turn, and you can only use each effect of Raiden to hand of the Lightsworn once per turn. So you cannot use its effect again. So now we're going to go ahead, and you could link summon into a copy of Appaloosa if you want to go for Appaloosa, or you could overlay for a copy of Minerva if you want to overlay for Minerva just to push for deeper for game, or you could synchro for a level 7 like Dawn Dragster, or a copy of the Michael the Ark Lightsworn, which is kind of funny because that's my first name. But we're going to go ahead and let's go ahead and do it this way and overlay into the copy of our copy of the Minerva right here. And then we're going to send the top 3 off the top of the deck that lets you detach a material and send the top 3 cards off the top of your deck, which is a copy of Minerva, a copy of Ash, and a copy of Hat Trigger. And the copy of Minerva will trigger that just got sent, and we'll send an additional card from the deck to the graveyard, which is just a Monster Reborn. Now you get to look at your graveyard and you go, okay, I have a Raiden, I have a Minerva, I have a Lila, and I have 3 names in the graveyard. I'm 1 away from getting a Judgment Dragon on the field, but I'm not going to want to board wipe myself because I have this really good board now, which is the only downside to Judgment Dragon. Now, you couldn't go for a lot of link monsters at this point that you really want to go for. You could just leave it like this, and you could swing with a board like this and hope that they get rid of the copy of Minerva next turn, because then you have a failsafe in your hand, which is the copy of your Judgment Dragon that you can just drop later and board wipe later on, which is why I always love playing 3 copies of Judgment Dragon in any Lightsworn deck I play. This card is so ridiculous just to be able to throw on the field and pay 1,000 and then board wipe. So during the end phase, if you swung at your opponent for 2,000, 3,000, 22, you've got like 9,200 damage on board just with this. But if you go into your main phase 2, you go into end phase and you pass, your effective Lumina will trigger, and her effect lets you send the top 3 cards of your deck to the graveyard during the end phase. We're going to go 1, 2, and 3 off of her, and we get to special summon off both of these wolves that we just sent from the deck to the graveyard. And I believe Minerva sends to the graveyard too, that you can send the top 3 cards of your deck to the graveyard if it's a drawback card effect, and any Lightsworn sent to the graveyard this effect, you can destroy cards on the field. So you don't really do anything with her during the end phase, but you do get the 2 wolves on your side of the field, which is super helpful too. So we're going to go ahead and pass. If our opponent can't deal with this board, we're going to go ahead and go into our next turn, and we're going to draw. This is turn 5 now. I'm probably going to push for game at this point. You can go ahead and link summon at this point. This is where Lightsworns come in really crazy. Link summon the copy of Lumina and the copy of Wolf together. Now this is just maximum potential I'm showing you guys. This is maximum potential turn 5. We're going to go ahead and go into the Curious. Curious's effect is going to go off, and if this card is link summoned, then you get to send a card from your deck to the graveyard, and if a card is sent from your deck to the graveyard by a card effect, then you can send the top 3 cards of your deck to the graveyard. So we're going to go ahead and send a card from our deck to the graveyard, which I am going to send a copy of Felice from my deck to the graveyard, and I am then going to get to mill the top 3 cards off the top of my deck, which Felice will then bring herself back to my side of the field, which the top 3 was a wolf, again, which then will special summon to my side of the field. And then if I want to synchro, I can synchro into that copy of the Judgment Dragon, which you want to check if you do have all of those monsters that you need that are different tuner monsters. So you have also the ability to banish the copy of your Damage Juggler if you want to banish Damage Juggler, and be able to add your copy of your last copy of the Perform Mage or Trick Clown from your deck to your hand, which this will banish. And then you have in the graveyard a copy of 1 tuner, you have 2 tuners, you have an Ash, which is 3, and you have Adahara, which is 4. So you have your 4 different tuner monsters with different names in your graveyard. So now you can synchro summon these 2 together if you want to, and go directly into your copy of the Judgment Dragon of the Heavens, which is going to give you an additional monster on your side of the field. You have Charge of the Light Brigade that you can then mill 1, 2, and 3, and then you get to add from your deck to your hand, which we haven't, I don't believe, normal summon this turn. And you can add your copy of Raiden. I don't think I normal summoned, but I'm not going to do it because you don't need to at this point. You have this particular field, and I won't summon out Judgment Dragon. So you just boop, Judgment Dragon, and you have this crazy field. Now this is turn 5, but even if this field would have been destroyed, I could have still brought this back. I still could have synchro summoned into this. This might not have happened, but this still would have, and then this would have happened still. This still would have happened. All 3 of these big boss monsters on the field would have happened. I would have board wiped, I would have summoned this, and then I could have board wiped again if I needed to, and I still could have OTK'd my opponent because all of these are dragons. The only downside of this card is it locks you into special summoning dragons, and it banishes the top 4 of your deck. Now, something to keep in mind that I'm going to go ahead and mention to you guys. During the end phase, you're going to send the top 4 of your deck to the graveyard, which is right here with Judgment Dragon, and then the effect of your copy of the Judgment of the Dragon of Heaven is going to send the top 3 off your deck and banish them. So guess what? You have no cards left in your deck. You have none. So by turn 5, you're probably going to mill yourself out. So this deck plays very fast. You need to get your deck in the graveyard as quickly as possible because that's where the deck functions. But at the same time, you have to manage your resources to know where you can push for game and how quickly you can push for game, because if you don't, you're going to run into a situation like that you have nothing left and you have no fuel left, which is why a lot of people build 60 card variants of this deck opposed to 40 cards like my variant. But this deck is supposed to be a fun deck to show you guys the fundamentals of Lightsworn, and a deck to summon out Judgment Dragon as quickly as possible, and it does just that very well. So let's go ahead and go into another test hand. I know that was a very long test hand, but I wanted to play it out and show you guys how the deck would actually play if you went into turn 3, turn 4, or not turn 3, but turn 5, where you're actually going like you're going first, then your opponent goes, and then you go again, and then your opponent goes again, and then that next turn is turn 5. It's only your 3rd turn, but it's turn 5 in the game. So let's go ahead and see what we can do for the next one. And that's the nice thing too about this deck, is you don't really have to pile shuffle it because the deck kind of pile shuffles itself. So we're going to go ahead and draw for turns. We're going to draw into an Ash, which is pretty good. Not a lot of people play hand traps in this deck, but I do in this build because I'm trying to go for the Judgment Dragon of Heaven. Because it just kind of gets you 4 tuners in the graveyard. I thought about putting in E-Telly with Ghost Ogre in this deck, but I didn't, so it's just another option if you guys want to go that route. So we're going to get 2 Ash Blossoms, Judgment Dragon, and a Wolf. Okay, this is a terrible hand. This is where the deck kind of gets into kind of that bad situation where you don't have a lot of plays, because Wolf is a brick if you draw it, Judgment Dragon is a brick if you don't have the 4 in the graveyard, and then the double Ash just kind of sealed the deal. So if you draw into another card, you're going to draw into Monster Reincarnation, and that's pretty much the ball game. And Lightsworns do brick. It does happen. It's an old deck. It's an old mechanic. when you're not playing the Chaos version that can just dig you out of literally any hole, you run into situations like that. You can, with the Chaos versions, you can top deck a card just off the top and you're fine. I mean, it's just the way it is. And that's not what this particular build is. This is a pure version that you're trying to go mildly Chaos with, but at the same time a tuner-ish version where you're trying to get at the copy of Judgment of Heaven. So let's go ahead and shuffle the deck and see what we can do. So we're going to go ahead and draw. We're going to get Lumina, Hat Trigger. We got a copy of Chaos Dragon Levineer, which is a secondary boss monster, a second copy of Malicious, and a copy of Minerva. Okay, not terrible, not great. So we're going to go ahead and let's just say we go second. So if we go second, we get an Ash. So if we did go second, it wouldn't help us that much. So let's just say we go first. So we're going to go ahead, and sometimes in Lightsworns, you do weird stuff, like you just normal summon a monster just to get you the mill. So we're going to go ahead and mill. We're going to go ahead and get this during the end phase, and we get a wolf. See, that's where it comes in handy, where you get the copy of wolf during the end phase, and you have 2 monsters on your side of the field. Now, your opponent could destroy both of these during your next turn, and you could be in a really rough situation. Now, you draw for turn, and you're going to draw into another Ash. So now that you have the Ash in your hand, and you have a little bit in the graveyard, you don't have all that much in the graveyard to be able to go off, you're probably not going to have the greatest of times. But you could go ahead and normal summon the copy of Minerva if you want to normal summon the copy of Minerva. Swing into your opponent if you need to, get rid of this and put it in the graveyard. And then during main phase 2, if you could survive that, you can banish these 3 from the graveyard and summon out your copy of your Chaos Dragon Levineer, which is going to help you out quite a lot, because if this card is used only to summon light, you can special summon a monster from the graveyard, which can be your Ash Blossom, which this is where it would come in handy to have a Ghost Ogre, because this could resolve on the field, which would be pretty good. And then you could go in your copy of Hat Trigger here, and then you could synchro these together during your main phase 2 and summon out a copy of, say, F.A. Dawn Dragster, and then you have a negation of spells and traps on your side of the field too, which again, not that great of a hand, because you drew a couple of bricks, but that's what happens when you play Lightsworns. That's why they do brick sometimes. They do brick dough. So that just happens. So let's go ahead and see what we can do with another test hand. So, and that's even the Chaos versions. The Chaos versions, when you play 3 Wolf and a Felice, you can brick. It happens. But when they go off, like that first hand, they go off. And they win very quickly. So let's go ahead and see what we can do with this next one. Let's see if we can get an insanely good hand. So we're going to go ahead and draw. We're going to go ahead and draw into a copy of Minerva, Lumina, Malicious, Hat Trigger, and Charge the Light Brigade. Okay, it might have been totally fixed with the Charge the Light Brigade. So we're going to go Charge. We're going to hit Raiden, and Judgment. Okay, so that's not bad because we hit a Raiden. So we're going to go ahead and normal summon the Lumina, use the Lumina effect, discard the copy of Hat Trigger, which Hat Trigger will hit the graveyard and resolve, losing 1,000 life points. You'll special summon the copy of Raiden. Raiden's effect will go off. Send the top 2 from the deck to the graveyard. You did hit Adahara, so you have hit 2 tuners in the graveyard, but it's only 2 different ones. Now you can overlay if you want to overlay. I usually do for the Hat Trigger and the copy of Raiden into a copy of Minerva. Minerva will then send from the top of the deck to the graveyard off the copy of Raiden, the top 3. Which is going to help you out a lot because you're going to hit a copy of Wolf. Wolf will help out a lot too, because now you can link these 3 together for Curious, because Curious does require a copy of 3 different monsters with the same attribute but different types, which you did have different types. And now you've hit 1, 2, 3 different types of Lightsworns, and you can special summon or send from your deck to the graveyard a copy of Felice, which then will special summon herself to your side of the field and give you an additional pop on your side of the field if you want to. And then you can send the top 3 of your deck to the graveyard, which will be a Hat Trigger, a copy of Wolf, and a copy of the Adahara, which gets you now 1... you have 1 tuner, 2 tuners. You just have 2 tuners in the graveyard, but you still have a synchro play if you want to go synchro, or if you want to overlay into another Minerva and put it down low. If you want to go that route, it's totally up to you. Or you can go into the Chaos Ruler. If you want to go into the Chaos Ruler, that's another option. If you want to go that route, I would probably go that route, go into the Chaos Ruler and dig deeper into the deck where you can go for 5 off the top, where we're going to go ahead and excavate the top 5 and then add a lighter dark from the top of our deck to the hand, which we hit a copy of Judgment Dragon, which I think we have all the names in the graveyard now. And if these are sent to the graveyard, then it says that you send all those cards to the graveyard, which the copy, I believe, the copy of Minerva will trigger. It won't super matter, but it's going to hit the copy of Malicious. We have a Malicious in the hand, so it's not going to matter, even if you didn't do that. But you have the copy of your Chaos Ruler on the field, and then you have a Judgment Dragon in the hand that you can then go 1, 2, 3, 4, and you already had 5 names in the graveyard. So again, it doesn't matter if you hit the Malicious or not. You just immediately summon out the copy of Judgment Dragon, and then now you can swing for 3, 3, and 24 with this board, and you still have an OTK with this board, which is pretty good. Your hand wasn't the best, but it wasn't bad. You still had plays. So that's pretty much how Lightsworns play. The pure version of the deck plays. You kind of get a lot of mills, and it's fun when it goes off. It does break sometimes, I will mention. But that's just Lightsworns. That's how the deck plays. You play a lot of really good cards that work really good in the graveyard, and sometimes you draw cards that you don't want to see. Like immediately drawing 2 Ash Blossoms, or immediately drawing 2 Judgments, or immediately drawing 2 Minervas. Like, and it's weird. Like, that's just the way the deck plays. I mean, it's a deck that was released back in 2008. Like, that's when this deck originally, like, came out, which I remember when this came out in Judgment of the Light, and it was a fun deck then. So let's go ahead and let me show you one more draw. We're gonna get a Wolf, Lumina, Charge, Lila, and Solar Recharge. See, that hand is peak performance hand. Like, going ahead and show you guys. Like, you use Charge, you mill the top 3. Once you mill the top 3, you're going to hit that copy of Plague Spreader, which is pretty good. Then you get to search from your deck to your hand literally any Lightsworn that you want, which you already have your copy of Lila, but I would go ahead and hit Raiden, because if you hit the copy of Raiden, you're going to be able to discard it with Solar Recharge to be able to revive it back with Lumina, and then you get more plays from there. So you've already got 2 of your tuners in your graveyard to get your Plague rolling. You have your copy of Solar Recharge, which then can discard this. And then you draw 2 off the top of the deck, and then you send 2 off the top of the deck, which is a Malicious and a copy of Raiden. Use the Malicious to banish, special summon out a copy of Malicious from the deck right here, and then use the copy of Lumina to be able to discard a card from your hand, which is going to be the one of Lila. Actually, Felice. I'd get rid of Felice because she counts as a tuner. So you have 4 different tuners in the graveyard now. About to be 5. And then you can put back on the top of your deck oh, excuse me, I didn't even revive off the copy of Lumina. You can use the copy of the Minerva or the copy of Plague Spreader to put back on the top of your deck a card, which can be your copy of Wolf or it can be your copy of Minerva. I would probably put Minerva just to dig a little bit more. And then now you can synchro these together if you want to synchro these together. Now that will banish itself. You can synchro these together and summon out the copy of the Chaos Ruler. And then you have the plays again to be able to mill 2 with the copy of Raiden, which you didn't mill before. And then you have the copy of Minerva again. But if you don't want to do that, even you can just use the copy of the Chaos Ruler and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and draw the top 5 off the top of the deck and be like, hey, I want Levenair from there, and I'm going to send the rest of these to the graveyard and then mill another card, which is Solar Recharge. And then you have plays still because you can banish Light and Dark from the graveyard and pop 2 cards on the field, which is pretty good, or revive a monster from the graveyard, and you have a synchro play here that you can go into Michael if you want to go into Michael, or you can summon out another card on your side of the field with a copy of Chaos Dragon Levenair if you only banish Light, and then you can go into Curious and keep going. So, I mean, you still have plays. So, that's pretty much it for this hand. That's pretty much it for this video, too. It's a fun deck to play around with, and like I showed you guys, it did brick like one good time to show you guys that that does happen. But that's just what happens in Lightsworns. Like I've said before, it just happens. That's what they do sometimes, and it's a fun deck to pretty much play around with, and the deck is really crazy when it goes off, like you guys can see. I mean, you can go through the entire deck in a single turn if you get a really insane hand. So anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell on your soon come part of notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.